Okay, so my name is Jack Cook. I'm a freshman at Brock Science, and I'm here to give the intro to iOS talk. So I'm going to do this by I'm going to teach the basic principles of iOS through the making of a calculator app. So I already have some code written. It's mostly just the logistical stuff that makes the calculator work. Okay. So if you click on the if you click on the project in the top left, well, actually, here, let me do this. In Xcode, you can create a new project with File, New Project. You're mostly going to want to use single view application in most cases, unless you know what these are. You're going to hit next. It's going to ask you for your app name, organization identifier, and the language you want to use. For this talk, I'm going to be using Swift, and it's going to be an iPhone app. So in any case, here in the project view, I guess, you can see a lot of basic stuff about your app, such as the bundle identifier as shown right here, version number, build number, team. This is needed when you're deploying to the App Store. This is the version of iOS you want it to run on, the minimum requirement. iPhone, iPad, both. This is automatically set for you when you create a project. It's the storyboard of your application, which I'm going to get into in just a second. This is what orientations you want the app to be compatible with. For this talk, we're just going to be doing portrait mode. And then there's some other stuff that you can go through here. There's a lot of stuff in the info file. So yeah. In iOS, and the interface of an iOS app is largely centered around the storyboard. So what this is basically is it's like this is representing a view in your app. You can create more of them by dragging out a view controller. There are different types of view controllers you can use. So here, this is going to be the calculator, essentially. So a calculator needs a number, I guess, that it displays to you as like the answer to the operations you put in and stuff. So here I'm going to make that number. So I'm going to set it to 0. That's what it's going to be when you start up the app. And just a couple of stylistic things. So here you can see I'm kind of modifying properties of this label right here. This can all be done in code, but it's very easy to do with the storyboard. So let's see. And then, okay, so yeah, here we can see the font, the color. I'm going to align it to the right. But yeah, so as you can see here, it's very easy to just create your app, essentially, what it looks like. And so in iOS, we have this thing called auto layout, which makes your app essentially compatible on several different screen types. So to modify the constraints of the view, I'm going to click this box on the bottom right, and so I can tell it I want it to be 40 pixels away from the top layout guide, which is right below the status bar. Oh, I'm going to uncheck that. It's going to be 16 pixels away from the edges of the screen, and I'm going to keep the height at 116 pixels. So this is always going to be true no matter what the screen size is of the app. So I can just hit add those 4 constraints, and then so we need the buttons on the calculator as well. For this, I'm just going to be using a view. I've written the code for it in this keypad view file, which I'm going to go through a little bit later. So I'm going to set the background. It's going to be transparent. Let's see. And it's going to fill up the rest of this screen. Right, yeah. So again, I'm gonna use auto layout so that it automatically adjusts to screen sizes, no matter how big or small the iPhone is. And this way, similarly to how Android interfaces are developed, it adapts to any new iPhone that will come out and all of the existing ones. So this is where the buttons are going to be generated by the code in, which reminds me, to set a custom class of any of these, you can go to the identity inspector and set the class of it. So in this case, right here I have keypad view. I can set this to keypad view. And it's important that you set the model to the module to the name of your app. So now, this is a keypad view, which is provided by this class. So to initialize a keypad view, you're going to have to override this required method and subclass UI view, which is provided by the user interface kit package in iOS. And so here essentially is all of the code that I'm using to actually generate the buttons of the calculator. Here we can see I'm defining the button. Here's the dimensions of it, and then this is looping through the sides and the top of the calculator, so that I can get the different, when the buttons are in different places, they'll have different text on them. So one important method here is that I'm calling the add target method on button, which on the button constant, which in Swift you can use constants by starting with let. So let I equals 0. Well, I've already used I right here. So let k equals 0. This is just an example. In Swift, this is it can't be modified ever. You can modify the properties of it, but you can't actually equate it to something else. It'll throw a compiler error. So in Swift, if you want to change the value of something, then you should use var, which indicates a variable, and then you can redefine it as much as you want. So yeah, so I have a constant right here, and so by calling add target on a UI button, what this does is it will, when the button is tapped, it calls the calculator button method, which is down here. So what I'm doing here essentially is I'm looking at the subviews of the label, and I'm looking at the subviews of the button and getting the text from the label, which I've just put in up here. So what I'm going to do later is check that text, and depending on what the text is, that'll be the function of the button. So one cool thing that iOS has is notifications, or notifications, sure, but in code, it's kind of like pinging other parts of your app, where you can send out a ping and other parts of your app can receive it. So I can do this by using the NS Notification Center. When you're using NS Notification Center, you're always going to want to use the default center. And then you can post a notification named, in this case I'll use calculator button. And the object is going to be the button. You can set this to nil. In most cases you don't need to send an object. but I'll explain later that it is necessary that we put the button here. So essentially what this is doing, here I can run the app. What this is doing is it's saying whenever a button of the calculator is pushed, you can kind of tell the rest of the app that it's been pushed, and it'll respond accordingly. So here we can see I have this keypad view which looks blank in the storyboard, but the code here is generating all of the buttons that come up here, which, by the way, all of the code that I'm using in this talk is available here if you want to follow along or look at it later. Just to put that out there. Okay, so when I tap one of these buttons, right now it does nothing because the notification that I just sent out isn't being received by anything. So here what I'm going to do is I'm going to receive the notification. So I'm going to use this calculator button method. And it's important that you use the same name as the other, as the notification that you sent out, otherwise it won't be received. And yeah, so now the text in the button that's being tapped is being passed to this method, which then basically contains what the button should do. So again, this is a lot of logistical code. It's not necessarily something that needs to be gone through, but now that I'm sending a notification through NS Notification Center, it's being passed to this method, and whenever I tap, or in this case, click a button in the simulator, it will do something, or not. Never mind. Okay. I don't... Okay. This doesn't want to work. I'm not sure why this... Oh, okay. I was supposed to do that a while ago. So to make this keypad and this label interact with the code, we're going to use something called an Iboutlet, which you can either add by control-clicking directly into your code, which will pop up this screen, which, by the way, in Xcode, you can use this button to display the whole file, this button to display two files, and then choose which file you want to display here, and then this to view the difference between your file locally and remotely if you're using Git. So I can add the Iboutlet. So here I already have it written, but yeah, so you can add an Iboutlet to your code by control-clicking into your file, make a name for it. You're going to want to make sure it's strong and that it's an outlet, and then connect, and now you can use this variable in your code. So I could set the text of the label, for example, like that. And I have access to all of the other parts of this label that we could see right here in the attributes inspector, such as the font or the text alignment. And so there's a lot of things that you can do to there's a lot of things that you can do with your Iboutlets. Oh, I'm going to leave that there. So I can hook up these Iboutlet, and now they are interacted with the code that I've already written several times in order to perform the functions of the calculator. Oh my god. Okay. I'm sorry, I'm not sure why this isn't working, but I'm just going to pull my code from GitHub that is working. Okay, so now the buttons work. I wish I could explain why it wasn't working. But in any case, the rest of the stuff that I was going to go through mainly consisted of, for example, you can create a new class in Swift by declaring the, well actually, Xcode provides it for you. If you just type in class, you can hit enter, and it's already written out stuff for you. So here's the name of the class. This is its superclass. Here you can see I've used UIView controller, and then here are the properties and methods. I'm using you can also define enums pretty easily in Swift, such as that I've done right here. You know what? Just make the code a little bit bigger. So yeah, stuff like this in Swift, it's really easy to define. There's a lot of documentation online. Yeah, Swift is good, basically. So I think the other thing that I was going to get into here is app icons, right? So they so here, if I go to the project, like again, I've shown here, you can modify a lot of basic information about your app. Stuff like an app icon, if you click the little arrow next to it, you don't actually have to add the files to your project. Oh, I may have lost my icons. Okay. The idea is, though, you can drag any image into these boxes, and as long as they correspond with the dimensions that it's showing you here, it'll take it. So, for example, 29 2x, that's indicating that it wants 2 times the 29 pixel icon. So this would take any icon that is square, and the edges are 58 pixels, basically. And so you can do that here. You don't actually have to add the files to your project. That's a mistake that you can make to add some extra megabytes to your app that you might not want. So try to avoid that, I guess. And so I guess another thing I was going to get into is when you launch an app, you see that it said calculator there. In iOS 8, it became really easy to modify what your app displayed when it launches, because when you generate a project, it creates this launch screen file. And so it's configured right here to show that launch screen file when it's opening up. So you can pretty easily change what is being displayed when your app starts up without actually having to use images as you used to have to do. Just going to remove constraints to remove the errors. But yeah, so here it's pretty much like a storyboard. It's just a nib file instead, and so I could add, well, I guess I wouldn't be able to tap that button, but just text, images, anything you want can go here and be displayed when you're starting up the app, as you saw briefly when the app started up. So overall, I mean, I'd say Swift is a pretty easy language compared. Well, I probably shouldn't put it that way, but compared to other programming languages, it's very beginner friendly, I guess. It's a little less like, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, but it's more just simple. The syntax is a lot nicer. You don't need, for example, you don't need parentheses around your if statements. You still need the braces. But just stuff like that makes it very easy to pick up as a beginner to programming. So iOS might be a good place to start. So I think that's all I had to go through. So if there were any questions that wanted to be asked, I might be able to answer them.
Questions?
So where are the best places to go for like beginner iOS resources?
Sure. So if you go to developer.apple.com, actually, you know what? So if in the iBooks store, this isn't necessarily for iOS, but if you just want to learn the Swift language in general, the Swift programming language, it's free. It's an amazing resource. It has everything that you'll ever need to know about Swift if you want to start learning it. But yeah, as I said, developer.apple.com. Apple, in my opinion, has some of the best documentation for their code. So if I'm ever having issues with my code, it's pretty easy to go to here and you can click resources, and if you're looking for iOS 8 for, or is that it? Developer library. But yeah, I mean, there's a ton of guides here on just everything that you could do in iOS essentially. So I mean, this is a great place to go if you're just looking to get started.